I go over to Robin and Cody's for Christmas, I'm going over to Robin and Cody's for Christmas. If they were to come over to my house, they'd be coming to Mary's house.
*StarSpill USA presents. The gavel slammed like a thunderclap, a sound so sharp it cut through the chatter of the packed courtroom and froze every soul in place. The echo bounced off the marble walls, lingering in the air like the memory of a gunshot. This was not television drama, not a scripted scene written for ratings. This was the brutal theater of real life, where reputations, marriages, promises, and decades of silence were being ripped apart, exposed under the relentless light of justice. At the center of it all stood Mary Brown. For years, she had been dismissed as the quiet, obedient first wife, the woman who stayed in the background, who smiled politely for the cameras while her world crumbled behind closed doors. She had endured whispers, pitying looks, and betrayal veiled in the language of faith, family, and duty. She was the one expected to remain silent, to endure, to keep sweet. But not today. Today, Mary Brown did not rise as a victim. She rose as a storm incarnate. Her resolve radiated from every step she took, every breath she drew, every word she prepared to unleash. The chains of silence she had carried for 30 years were gone, shattered in the space of one heartbeat. Voice cut through the air like steel, sharp, unwavering, and alive with the power of truth. You stole my trust, my money, my future, and now I want it all back. The words landed like an explosion. The gallery erupted in gasps, the sound swelling like a wave crashing against stone. Christine's eyes filled instantly, her tissue trembling in her hand as though it were the only thing keeping her steady. Janelle's jaw clenched so hard her lips trembled. Her fists balled on her knees, her knuckles white from the effort of holding back years of rage. Every person in that courtroom felt the shiver, the weight of decades breaking open before them. Even the judge, a man of law trained to maintain neutrality. A figure of authority and control leaned back in his chair, visibly unsettled. He had seen liars, cheats, and criminals of all kinds, but rarely had he seen such ferocity wrapped in such composure. Mary did not tremble. She did not falter. Across from her sat Cody Brown, once the self-proclaimed patriarch. The leader, the centerpiece of his carefully crafted empire. Today, he was diminished. His once steady hands fumbled at his collar. His tie, the perfect symbol of his respectability, now hung awkwardly. His smirk, that trademark smirk which had charmed his wives and captivated audiences, was gone. For decades, Cody had thrived on control, on charm, on dominance. He had built a life on silence, a silence that kept others small while he stood large. But today, stripped of pretense, stripped of his stage, stripped of his control, he was not a leader. He was not a star. He was simply the accused. Mary's attorney rose deliberately, opening a thick manila folder. The air seemed to grow heavier, the anticipation sharper with every motion. The shuffle of papers echoed louder than whispers. The eyes of the entire room fixed on the stack of documents that had the power to dismantle a man's legacy. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, voice steady and deliberate. "What you are about to see is not speculation. It is not assumption. It is not conjecture. It is documented proof. Proof of forged signatures, of secret withdrawals, of false promises. Proof that Mr. Brown deceived, manipulated, and defrauded my client, Mary Brown, for his own selfish gain." The storm had begun. The first weapon, property transfers. Documents projected onto the courtroom screen. Cody's name alongside Mary's. Signatures authorizing sales and transfers. Signatures Mary swore she had never made. "This land," Mary said, her voice calm but cold enough to chill the room, "was promised to me. He said it was my future home. He told me to wait, to trust, that we were building something together. But while I waited, while I trusted, he sold it behind my back." The crowd shifted. Murmurs rippled like wind through trees. Even those who had come to watch casually now leaned forward, sensing they were witnessing the unraveling of a life. The second weapon, bank records, a $75,000 withdrawal from the Brown family trust. Money Mary had believed was set aside for collective expenses for the future of the family. Instead, it was funneled into an LLC belonging to Robin, Cody's fourth wife. The date of the transfer matched precisely with family meetings where Cody had assured his wives he was broke, urging them to cut back their spending. From the back of the room, Christine whispered bitterly, "That was the week he said we couldn't pay Gwen's tuition." Janelle's fists tightened further, her nails digging into her palms as her eyes burned with rage. The third weapon, the promises, empty words. Text messages projected larger than life onto the screen. "Don't worry, Mary. You'll get your share of the Flagstaff property. We'll build your house right next to Robin's. Just wait patiently. You deserve this, I swear." Every message was a knife. Every message a reminder that the future she believed in was nothing but smoke. And then the bombshell. The courtroom fell silent as a small recorder clicked. A moment of static hissed before Cody's voice filled the chamber. Cold, calculated, arrogant, Mary's done. She won't leave, but she won't fight either. She's just there. I'll shift things. Without her noticing, gasps rang out. Louder this time, sharper. The sound of illusions shattering. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with betrayal. Murmurs rose again, rolling through the crowd like thunderclouds gathering before a storm. The journalists scribbled furiously, their pens racing across pages, their faces pale with realization. They weren't covering a separation. They weren't covering the end of a marriage. They were documenting the collapse of an empire. It's the fall of a man who had built his kingdom on secrecy, silence, and manipulation. Even the judge shifted uneasily, his robe heavy on his shoulders, the weight of justice pressing harder than ever. This was no longer a family quarrel. This was fraud. This was betrayal. This was the exposure of decades of lies, laid bare under the unforgiving light of truth. And still Mary stood unshaken. Her hands rested gently on the table. Her eyes did not waver. She did not look at the papers. She did not look at the judge. She looked at Cody, only Cody. In front of her lay a single photograph. Her, Cody, and their child, captured in one of the rare moments of happiness long ago. She did not place it there for nostalgia. She did not place it there for pity. She placed it there as a statement, as a symbol of everything that had been stolen, of everything that was now being reclaimed. Her voice cut through the silence like the blade of final judgment. I did not come here for revenge. I came for the truth. Because when someone steals your voice for 30 years, the only place left to be heard is in court. The silence that followed was absolute, heavier than any gavel strike, denser than the marble walls themselves. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Every heartbeat in that chamber echoed like the ticking of a clock counting down to judgment. Finally, the judge spoke, his eyes stern and weighted with the gravity of the moment. Turned to Cody. His voice carried not only authority, but inevitability. "Mr. Brown, prepare your defense. You will need it." The words hung in the air, heavy as iron, settling over Cody like a shroud. His shoulders sagged, his face drained, pale. His eyes darted wildly, panic replacing arrogance. The man who had strutted through life with untouchable confidence was gone. In his place sat a defendant staring into the abyss of accountability. The courtroom doors creaked open once more, heavy, deliberate, echoing like the opening of a tomb. And Mary Brown walked in again, not as the silenced wife, not as the overlooked first spouse, but as the storm itself. Her heels struck the marble floor with a rhythm like the drum beats of war. Her lawyer followed, binder in hand, the words Brown v. Brown stamped boldly across the front. The air shifted. This was no longer about tears, no longer about betrayal, no longer about love lost. This was about receipts. This was about justice. This was about 30 years of silence erupting into thunder. And as Cody adjusted his jacket with trembling hands, stripped of the power he once held, the truth loomed above him like a storm cloud ready to break. This was no longer just a trial. This was the dismantling of an empire. This was the rise of Mary Brown, and the storm had only just begun.
Do you? You keep talking business like.
No. Keeping the house was the important thing. Having the house was the important thing.
Asterisk, the judge leaned forward, his voice sharp and deliberate, slicing through the tense air. Mr. Brown, did you ever give Miss Brown any written word of property conveyance to her? Cody shifted in his chair, his collar suddenly suffocating, sweat beading at his temple. His eyes darted to his lawyer, then down to the polished wooden floor as if searching for an escape. Finally, in a voice stripped of its usual swagger, he muttered, "No, but I promised her." The words landed flat, hollow, pathetic. And Mary, her voice forged from years of silence turned into steel, struck back instantly. "You promised. And then you used my money to buy land I was never even allowed to set foot on. Which family was it for, Cody? 'Cause it wasn't mine anymore, was it?" The room shuddered, heads turned, eyes widened. Then Mary lifted her phone, the glow of the screen illuminating the truth, stamped February 14th, 2023. Valentine's Day. The message appeared across the courtroom, projector like a dagger of betrayal. "Hope you're doing well. Sorry things didn't work out. I still thank you for your assistance with the Robin property." The air drained from the courtroom. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Christine clutched the rail, shaking her head, whispering that man never deserved her devotion. Janelle leaned forward, eyes blazing, and hissed, "She's finally breaking free." Even the judge lowered his head for a moment, repeating, aloud as if the words themselves were too absurd to believe, "Assistance." With the Robin property, his eyes snapped back to Cody, narrowing with intensity. "So, the court is clear. Mr. Brown, are you admitting that Miss Brown invested in property titled under another wife's name?" Cody flailed his words, stumbling over one another. She offered. She knew she wanted to help. But Mary rose, her voice thunderclap strong. "I never offered, I invested. He promised me our retirement home. That land was ours. He deceived me." The silence after her words was heavier than stone. Then, like a ripple across still water, murmurs spread. And in the back of the courtroom, almost unnoticed at first, Robin slipped quietly into the room. She moved like a shadow, sliding into the last row. Her face unreadable, but her presence seismic. Mary's eyes flicked to hers just for an instant, and in that silent exchange was 30 years of history. No words, just recognition, just wounds. The gavel struck. "We will now break for lunch," the judge declared, but his tone was grave, almost warning. "Let me be clear. This court has seen enough to establish a serious pattern of misrepresentation and financial misconduct." Cody's face blanched. The empire of charm and control he had built so carefully was beginning to collapse brick by brick. Outside, chaos exploded. Reporters swarmed the doors, cameras flashing, microphones shoved forward. "Mary, is this financial fraud?" "Cody, are you afraid of the verdict?" "Robin, did you know her money bought your home?" None of them answered. Mary walked through the chaos, silent and resolute. Cody stormed past, pale and silent. Robin lowered her eyes and slipped away. But inside, Mary's lawyer prepared the next blow. Surprise witness, one who had sat in the shadows once before, now ready to step forward. The storm was only gathering. When the session resumed, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Cody was called to testify. His shoulders were stiff, his jaw clenched so tight it looked as if it might snap. He did not resemble the bold, cocky man of television screens. He resembled a desperate man trying to hold back an imploding dam with bare hands, stammered about the greater good, claiming he had never intended to betray Mary. His words hung limp, and from the gallery came bitter laughter, Christine's laughter sharpest of all. Mary's attorney advanced, eyes locked on Cody like a predator on prey. She raised the Valentine's message high. "Mr. Brown, you thanked my client for funding another wife's property. How is that not financial manipulation?" Cody exhaled hard, running his tongue across dry lips. "It was just a text," he said, voice faltering. "I was being kind." The lawyer's reply sliced through him. "Kind? By thanking her for unknowingly building another woman's house?" The crowd murmured. Cody winced. Christine whispered, venomously, "He's throwing her under the bus and backing it up." And then Janelle rose, Tomacosed. Her voice cut like a blade. "I covered his bills when he couldn't. I raised children that weren't mine. I did my share. And I watched him use Mary as a scapegoat. I watched him promise her land he never meant to give, only to hand it to Robin instead." The gallery gasped as she produced a series of texts. Projected on the screen, Cody's words burned. "Don't worry about Mary. She won't do anything. She never does." Robin's reply, "I feel bad. She's trying so hard." And then Cody's chilling response, "We all play our parts. Hers is just smaller now." The room erupted. The judge's gavel slammed for order, but Cody's silence was louder than any protest. He did not deny it. He could not. And then the doors creaked open once more. Heels clicked softly against the floor. The air seemed to shift. Robin Brown entered slowly, alone, no lawyer, no folder, no shield. She clutched her purse like a lifeline, her eyes heavy with something unspoken. Whispers surged like electricity. Even Cody shifted uneasily, his bravado cracking. The judge's eyes widened. "Miss Brown, are you appearing to testify?" Robin rose, her voice trembling but audible. "Yes, Your Honor. Voluntarily." Cody spun toward her, hissing, "What are you doing?" But Robin never looked at him. She walked to the stand, her hands shaking, her face pale, and when she spoke, the words detonated like a bomb in the silence. "I didn't know everything, but I knew enough. And that makes me guilty too." The courtroom gasped as one. Even the court reporter froze mid-stroke, her pen hanging in the air. Robin's voice cracked, but her words were resolute. "I gained from decisions made without the consent of the other wives' properties, money, backroom arrangements. Cody told me it was all square, part of moving on. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him, but that doesn't make it right." Her eyes locked with Mary's, for the first time in years. The two women rivals, adversaries, strangers, bound by one man's lies, saw each other not as enemies but as survivors. Mary blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She had prepared for war, not for an apology. And in that instant, Cody's empire collapsed further. Not from Mary's accusations, not from Janelle's testimony, but from the confession of the one woman he believed would never betray him. The storm was no longer approaching. Was here.
He says 2 years, so what?
I'm not going
It
to
takes a whole year to build.
No, I'm not going to. Well, no, Cody, the problem is I wouldn't be able to build.
Robin's voice trembled but did not falter. "I didn't forge documents. I didn't transfer money. But I also did not question things when they began to look suspicious. And in this family, silence is never innocent." Cody shot to his feet, seething. "You're betraying me now?" The judge's gavel cracked. "Sit down, Mr. Brown." But Cody raged on, his voice trembling with anger. "Robin, after everything we built together, you're doing this now?" Robin's gaze lifted, her words calm but devastating. "Didn't build anything, Cody. You constructed something upon me. There's a difference." Cody spun to the judge, desperate. "She's upset. She doesn't know what she's saying." Mary's attorney rose, her tone cutting through the room. Your Honor, we ask the court to note that Miss Robin Brown's testimony directly contradicts Mr. Brown's earlier claims that all wives were in full knowledge of these arrangements. The judge nodded gravely. Noted. But Robin was not finished. Her voice steadied, heavier now, with guilt. I saw the accounts. I knew money was moving in from different sources, but I didn't ask where it came from. I trusted Cody when he told me not to worry, to let him handle it. I stayed silent. I should have asked more questions. Before the room could react, Janelle stood suddenly, clutching a worn green folder no one had seen before. The judge allowed her to approach. She opened it with deliberate care. Your Honor, this is from our old family budget meetings in 2018 and 2019 when we shared income, shared expenses, and shared land plans. She flipped through color-coded notes, Cody's handwriting scrawled across the pages. The evidence was damning. Each wife had an allocation. Mary's was clearly marked $100,000 for her new home. Janelle's voice hardened, but money never reached her. A month later, Robin's Arizona home was enlarged. $98,000 gone. Didn't vanish. It was diverted. Robin's hand flew to her mouth. Her whisper cracked. I didn't know. Cody snapped back instantly. That wasn't Mary's money. We all pitched in. Why am I being treated like I stole? Mary stood, her voice steady as iron. Because you did, Cody. You stole a future from me. And you stole the truth from them. The judge leaned back, tired but intent. We need to complete this testimony. For the first time, Christine rose, her voice quivering with controlled fire. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge hesitated, then allowed it. Christine walked to the front, her eyes burning. I left Cody because I was tired of being invisible. But Mary stayed long after the rest of us gave up. And now she's being treated like she did something wrong. She didn't, Cody. You didn't just lie to her once. You manipulated her over and over. You made secret promises, smiled for the cameras, and let her believe in a marriage that never truly existed. This isn't just a family breaking down. This is a pattern finally revealed. And then for the first time, Mary turned to Robin in front of everyone. The judge, the lawyers, the gallery, the media. Her voice carried both strength and sorrow. Robin, for years, when people questioned your motives, I defended you. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. Robin nodded, her eyes wet. I remember Mary's words struck like lightning. You were never the problem. He was. But you let him build a castle for you using our bricks. Robin's tears spilled. I didn't realize how much it cost you. Mary did not flinch. I don't need an apology. I needed the truth. And now I finally have it. The entire courtroom froze. No shouting, no objections. Only the heavy silence of reality settling in. The judge closed his binder slowly. His voice was firm, resonant. This is not a criminal case, but what we have heard, the financial manipulation, the broken vows treated as contracts, the imbalance of trust cannot be ignored. This court has seen enough. He looked across the room, at Robin, at Christine, at Janelle, and finally at Mary. Miss Brown, one final question. After all this, what do you want? Mary rose, her eyes steady, her voice carrying years of buried truth. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. I want Cody to face the consequences, not just for what he did to me, but for what he created at all of our expense. I don't need his money. I want the world to know what happens when someone trades love for control. The judge's eyes narrowed, and then he delivered the shock no one saw coming. This court will hear closing arguments tomorrow. But be advised, final financial audits have been requested by the state for further investigation. This may no longer be a civil lawsuit. Gasps shook the room. Christine covered her mouth. Robin collapsed into her seat. Cody went white as chalk. The gavel fell. The day was done. Mary walked out, not yet victorious, but no longer invisible. Cody followed, not the star, not the patriarch, but the defendant. The family was gone. What remained was reckoning. Outside, rain lashed against the courthouse steps. Reporters pressed forward in dripping coats. Cameras flashing, questions firing like bullets. Mary, do you feel vindicated? Cody, do you? Regret it, Robin? Will you testify in the audit? None answered. Inside her car at last, Mary exhaled. Not because she had won money. Not because she had won the lawsuit. But because, for the first time in decades, she had chosen herself. Christine squeezed her hand. Janelle whispered, "You did it." And as Mary looked out at the rain, letting it fall against the glass, she finally understood storms don't always shatter you. Sometimes they wash you clean. Cody emerged next, but his spotlight had turned harsh. No cheers. No applause. Only tough questions and cold stares. Robin left through a side door alone. And Mary, she didn't bow her head. She didn't run. She stood tall in the rain, free at last. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. This was the story of Mary Brown's storm, brought to you by StarSpill USA, where the silence breaks and the truth finally roars.